100 days of Donald Trump's weakness and Vladimir Putin's eternal disgrace. Let's dive into it now. I'm Iryna Uzlova, and today I'm joined by Ukrainian journalist Dmytro Gordon. Dmytro, welcome. Good to see you. Hello, Iryna. Good evening to our esteemed audience. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes, and to our audience as well. Friends, be sure to subscribe to all of Dmitri's Telegram channels. The links are here, as well as all of his YouTube channels. I'm subscribed everywhere. I read everything and use the linked materials in my programs. Yesterday, Dmytro published information both on Gordon website and in Telegram, where the opinions of Ukrainians, their quotes and comments were collected. Of particular importance was the reaction of the US Embassy to the shelling initiated by Russian dictator Putin, which resulted in a ballistic strike destroying an entranceway in a residential building in Kiev. It was only the next day, after a US citizen was killed among others, that the embassy issued a statement. This strike is not consistent with Trump's calls for a ceasefire. They noted that. At the same time, Vladimir Putin said, "What approach? We were hitting military facilities." He was speaking to international journalists. Let's listen to what he said and discuss. If they had seen our missiles destroy entire residential neighborhoods, they would hardly have been able to talk about it. They would not have survived. If they saw anything, it was only from the outside, and the strike was not on residential areas, but on defense industrial complex facilities, on factories. It was these strikes that your journalists recorded. If we cannot reach an agreement peacefully, we will achieve our goals militarily. If there is no agreement, the situation may change for them for the worse. It is not worth delaying. We need to come to the negotiating table. No words, wrote many Ukrainians, as Dmytro compiled their reactions alongside his editorial. The US response drew sharp criticism, and the whole situation underscores the boldness of Putin's actions on the world stage. Trump is now acting like the war doesn't concern him. He states, "What attack? He had an attack in the Middle East." And when you look at the footage of Putin, it's obvious how much his facial expression reflects his inner state. His outward appearance is deteriorating because it is impossible to hide his inner essence. He lies all the time. From the very beginning, as long as I can remember, he has always lied. He used to do it with more conviction, more energy. Now there's no enthusiasm or conviction in his words. He even coughs constantly, as if he can't stop, and looks extremely unhealthy. His gestures, his facial expression, his voice, everything is repulsive.
Сейчас уже даже врет как-то без энтузиазма, знаете, вот нет у него какого-то огня в этом деле. Да, тут огонь нужен, врать так врать уже, а он врет так, что видно, что врет. Кашляющий уже, кашляет все время. Че он все время кашляет, я думаю, хоть бы подавился уже своим кашлем, что ли.
Без конца, и кряхтит еще так противненько, и ручонки эти свои синенькие, реально фиолетовые перебирает там.
Противненько очень. Я не представляю, кто ему дает еще. Вы знаете, отвратительная рожа.
The reaction of the American embassy was restrained, which is not surprising. They are acting within the guidelines. Trump has his own position. He sympathizes with Putin, and he openly talks about his desire to reach an agreement with him. This ignores the obvious. Putin has no intention of negotiating with anyone. We watch Trump. We watch his actions. The situation is unstable, and we are talking about America, the most powerful country in the world with checks and balances. Trump wants to strike Iran, and despite my respect for the Iranian people and their ancient culture and heritage, the current government is represented by fanatics and criminals who threaten peace. Strikes on Iran I support. Trump seeks to help Israel, to solve the Iranian issue, and to show Reagan, the two Bushes, Clinton, Biden, Obama couldn't do it before him, but he could.
они угрожают всему миру, они хотят подорвать весь мир. И поэтому удары по Ирану я поддерживаю однозначно. Но посмотрите, Трамп, он хочет ударить по Ирану, он хочет помочь Израилю, хочет решить иранский вопрос и сказать затем: видите, до меня кто был? Все они. Вот с 79-го года. А это и Рейган, между прочим, и два Буша, и Клинтон, и Байден, и Обама. Вот все они не смогли решить иранский вопрос, а я решил.
He wants to present himself as a decisive player, but Congress and the Senate immediately intervene, saying, "We are not sure whether to attack Iran, and in fact, try to do it without our authorization. Congress has to give official approval. No one has authorized it to take such action. This is not Russia, where Putin's word becomes an immediate order. And this is directly related to the Ukraine issue. The whole world can see how naked Putin is. He has been given a week, 2 weeks, 2 more. You can't count how many deadlines and postponements he has received. But he is still there. Trump, as well as some European leaders who came to Kiev, talked about an unconditional ceasefire. But Putin keeps changing the terms. He put forward one, now he puts forward another, and now he demands that Kyiv destroy all weapons supplied by the West. Not only must the deliveries stop, but the weapons that have already been handed over must also be destroyed.
Я имею в виду Путина, постоянно условия свои совершенствует. Он выдвинул одни, теперь выдвигает еще, теперь он говорит, и вообще надо Киеву уничтожить все оружие, которое ему дал Запад. То есть мало того, что Западу надо перестать давать Киеву оружие, еще надо Киеву уничтожить.
What else will he say? None of this is interesting. Even listening to and discussing this nonsensical rhetoric is unpleasant. Trump is putting up with it, and Congress and the Senate are asking questions. Why are you putting up with this? What's going on? Why are we being bullied? How can you allow someone to bully the great United States in front of the whole world and you remain silent? This is not just about you personally, it's about us too. You are our president, elected by the majority, a legitimate head. What is going on and how long will this continue? I am convinced that as soon as the Americans, together with the Israelis, solve the Iranian issue, they will immediately move on to actions against Russia. I have absolute confidence in this. Iran is only an intermediate stage, not the final station in this geopolitical route. Yes, I have the same feeling. Today marks exactly 100 days since Ukraine unconditionally accepted the US peace proposal for a full ceasefire. Over these 100 days, Russia has consistently rejected the first step towards peace, resorting to manipulation and blackmail. The whole world is watching this line of behavior. This is where we would like to start, because Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova states, "We have been in favor of peace since childhood." Against this background, it sounds extremely cynical. The comments also concern her appearance, the look, the makeup, the overall image. Everything raises questions. Visual details such as sloppily painted roots or unsuccessful makeup are noted with irony. Zakharova, meanwhile, declares herself ready for talks and flights to Istanbul.
Вот смотри, я тут, Дмитрий, думала, это у нее такой подбитый или пропитый смоки айс. Вы обратите внимание на эти глаза. Напротив, я уже молчу о подежинке вот этой вот какой-то фюрерской, совсем не модной. То, что корни там не крашены, даже если это милирование. Ну и мейкап явно то ли стилист запил вместе с ней, гример, визажист, то ли это уже просто ничем не скрыть. Так вот она сказала, мы с детства за переговоры готовы лететь в Стамбул.
Russia's conscientious implementation of the Istanbul agreements provoked a sharp reaction in Kyiv, an outburst of indignation and fury. The comments from the Ukrainian side were extremely cynical. Both officials and journalists spoke out. One of the TV presenters of Channel 24 stated with full confidence that there were allegedly no 6,000 surrendered Ukrainian soldiers and that all this was a fabrication of Moscow, nothing more than a myth. According to her, in Russia, such statements are made solely to inflame the situation. How am I doing? Beautiful. a gorgeous woman, a poet's dream. This is the Russian Federation. Mikhail Zadornov, with whom I socialized a lot, was, of course, a Russian chauvinist and imperialist, but an extremely witty man. Under my influence, he even revised some of his views, especially about Americans. He had masterpieces. For example, he used to say, "You know that in Russian there is no letter F, it's a Greek letter. We have P, so the Federal Assembly of the Federation Council of the Russian Federation should be read as the Assembly of the Council of the Russian Federation." When I look at people like Zakharova, I see in them the embodiment of this very Russian essence. I think she knows how to do it. At least when Putin discusses Iran with Xi Jinping, it's obvious. The master. The master should be kissed. We'll come back to him. Istanbul, 100 days, negotiations. Do you see any point after the 22nd to continue dialogue with murderers, terrorists, war criminals who send 500,000 bloody aerial targets on our heads? Why? I am absolutely sure it is still necessary to talk.
К нему еще вернемся. Но Стамбул, 100 дней, переговоры. Вы видите смысл после 22 числа продлевать с убийцами, террористами, военными преступниками, которые посылают по 500 кровавых воздушных целей на наши головы какие-то переговоры? Зачем?
It's hard not to be disgusted. I have spoken to several of our negotiators who participated in the Istanbul talks twice. According to them, the atmosphere was extremely pressurized. Across from them sat representatives, among whom Medinsky, a man claiming to be a historian, stood out. He is known not so much for his scientific achievements as for his scandals, accusations of plagiarism, a dubious dissertation, and incidents as Minister of Culture. He is not a scientist, but rather an example of what Zadornov aptly joked about. His remarks in negotiations were irritating, to the point of wanting to just shut him up. He was born in the town of Smela, Cherkasy region, and said, "Don't tell me how good Ukraine is, I lived there." Pavlo also figured in the discussion. He is the author of new textbooks that rewrote history again. Russia continues its usual practice of tweaking facts to fit the desired narrative. The new textbooks include language about the SWO, a fictitious war with NATO, and accusations against Ukraine about alleged plans to attack Russia. All this is yet another round of distortion of reality.
Да, опять переписали. Русские чем занимаются? Они все время переписывают историю. Это их хобби. Все время переписывают. Вот они переписали опять учебники. Это интереснейшая история об этой истории. Переписали учебники, вписали туда так называемую СВО, войну с НАТО, которую Россия ведет, значит, что Украина напасть хотела на Россию и так далее.
All of them are essentially Stalinists, oriented towards Stalin throughout their lives, so the new textbooks included appropriate interpretations. The 1937 repressions, it turns out, did not happen. The peoples, Karachais, Crimean Tatars, Chechens, Ingush, Kalmyks, Balkars, were allegedly relocated because of their complicity with the Nazis. They were forcibly removed from their forced places, loaded like cattle onto trains. Many died on the way, unable to withstand the conditions, while others died on the spot, in the north, in Uzbekistan, in the steppes of Kazakhstan. All this was reflected in the textbooks, but Ramzan Kadyrov reacted sharply and stood up in defense of the Chechens. After that, the textbooks were promptly rewritten, the problematic lines were removed, the entire edition was reprinted, and the Minister of Education personally came to Kadyrov and read out the new version. This is Russia. As for negotiations, Medinsky remains one of those with whom we have to dialogue, no matter what. Negotiations are necessary because the war must end. Let the whole world see who comes for peace and who does not. Ukraine is seeking an unconditional ceasefire, while Russia is demonstrating its unwillingness to compromise.
Вот, поэтому про переговоры теперь. Вот это Мединский, это такой урод, с кем приходится говорить. Я считаю, что переговоры нужно продолжать. Война должна заканчиваться все равно. Надо проводить переговоры, продолжать их. И пусть весь мир видит, кто с чем на эти переговоры приехал. Украина, которая хочет безоговорочного перемирия и затем мира. Или Россия, которая не хочет мира и не хочет перемирия, естественно.
Yes, it will be telling. If anyone still hasn't realized that Russia is not seeking peace despite Putin's blows and revelations, let them look at what's going on. I am as confident as you are that Trump is capable of throwing Putin off balance and setting up unexpected surprises for the Kremlin. The very fact that he effectively rejected Putin's attempts to offer mediation says a lot. Putin was clearly trying to please Putin, and Trump's response was, "First deal with your war, then you'll deal with the Middle East." This may indicate a change in Trump's rhetoric and perhaps in his attitude toward Putin and his attempts to make himself look like a peacemaker. Putin wanted to sell his favor. Putin wanted to make it clear to Trump, "I will make an agreement with the Iranians who are our close partners, and in return, you will cede Ukraine to me. This, they say, is our zone of influence. We will figure out what to do with it, and I will settle the issue with Iran." Mediation on a grand scale, but they answered him directly. "Who are you to be a mediator? By what right? We don't need mediators. We will decide what to do ourselves." The attempt failed. Putin at times behaves as if he is playing a naive card game, and he does it primitively and clumsily. The impression is that he is already losing touch with reality, is no longer oriented in what is happening, and has clearly lost his inner focus.
Вообще, я считаю, если честно, сейчас без шуток, я считаю, что он уже отстает от реальности, потерял бдительность, и он уже не в себе, конечно.
These years, when he was cut off from people during the COVID and socialized only with a narrow circle of cronies, played a cruel joke on him. He has lost his sense of reality. His current pronouncements and initiatives are reminiscent of old age, of losing touch with the dynamics of time. He has reached the age when he cannot keep up with the rapidly changing rhythm of life. Everything is happening too fast. A person who draws information from folders, blue, black, or red, does not realize that there are other views. Those who were brought up in the spirit of the late Soviet era are doomed to lag behind. At 73, it is impossible to maintain the same speed of reaction. These are not the days of newspapers, when news traveled slowly. Today, everything changes in a matter of minutes. If you only read pre-prepared material, you're taken out of context. That's what seems to be happening to him.
Успевать за стремительно меняющимся временем. Это же не 30-50 лет назад, когда ни интернета, ничего, когда газеты, когда новости медленно доходят. Это время сегодня, когда меняется все в течение минуты-двух буквально. Вот так, хоп, и уже другое. А если ты папочки читаешь, то ты выпадаешь из контекста.
In a recent speech, Putin admitted, "The world is changing dramatically." He seems to realize this, but he is not changing, only becoming less and less adequate, both in his statements and in his appearance. His plan is essentially using Ukraine as a bargaining chip. This plan has obviously failed. Trump doesn't need it, and he will most likely act on his own, in tandem with Israel. But the question arises, why is Trump slow to strike Iran? A possible explanation, as The Guardian wrote, is doubts about the effectiveness of a strike on Iran's nuclear facility, which is located 90 to 100 meters underground. There is a possibility that it might not be destroyed the first time. There may be other factors holding Trump back. Nevertheless, if he did decide to strike, it would be a show of force, a signal not only to Putin, but also to other authoritarian leaders that he will not be deterred. What a pity that Berlusconi has died. I look at Putin. His forehead is visibly wrinkled, as if Botox had not been renewed for a long time, and it was Berlusconi who introduced him to plastic procedures. Berlusconi loved cosmetology. He was fond of girls, many at the same time, and it was he who recommended his surgeon to Putin. At one point they were almost like twins because of similar surgeries. Now, perhaps because of sanctions, access to the doctor is restricted, or the surgeon himself has disappeared from the horizon. but Putin's face speaks for itself. As for Iran and Trump, will Trump strike, for example, Fordow, where the reactor is hidden underground at a depth of about 60 meters? I believe the fate of the facility is sealed. Even if Trump doesn't make up his mind, Israel can act on its own. The capabilities of the Mossad and special forces are known. Trump seeks an outcome, a statement of power and influence. He fears not failure as such, but the absence of triumph. He seeks a resounding success to show the world what he can do.
Участь реактора предрешена, потому что даже если Трамп не решится, то Израиль вручную это сделает. То есть туда подъедут команда хорошо обученная, и все это просто взорвут. Вот. Возможности Моссада миру хорошо известны. Но я думаю, что Трамп решится. Ему очень хочется завершить хоть что-то результативно и показать всему миру, что вот я что могу. Он боится, знаете чего? Он боится неудачи. Он боится того, что это не будет триумфом.
If this is not a triumph, it will be the beginning of the end. It is understandable why Trump is worried, but the feeling is that by the end of Sunday, the Iran issue will be closed. Meanwhile, Leah Khamenei, the 86-year-old leader, has to hide in various bunkers, which is not easy at his age. He clearly wants to be eliminated, and it seems possible. Putin takes it personally, because if the leader of 90 million people in Iran has been eliminated, what's to stop him, the leader of a country of 140 million people, from being eliminated? Israel Katz, Israel's defense minister, said that Israel's army knows how to act to achieve its goals. Khamenei cannot continue to exist if he has set the goal of destroying Israel. Trump said earlier that he knows where Khamenei is, and added that he is not being touched for now, but the future is in question. And the next day, when asked about Khamenei's wishes, he replied, "Good luck. It remains to be specified, at which dacha."
А грохнут, потому что Израиль Катц, министр обороны Израиля, вот цитирует Sky News, сказал сегодня, что Цахал был проинструктирован, как действовать, знает, что для достижения всех целей Аятолла Али Хаменеи не может продолжать существовать, который возглавляет такую страну, как Иран, и сделал уничтожение Израиля своей миссией по жизни. Он не может продолжать существовать. А Трамп позавчера сказал, что мы знаем, где Хаменеи, пока он в безопасности, мы его не трогаем, но who knows, что дальше. А вчера на вопрос, чтобы он пожелал Хаменеи, сказал удачи. И действительно вы правы.
Остается уточнить, у какой дачи.
When the president of the most powerful country in the world wishes Khamenei good luck, it sounds intimidating. It's not good luck. Somewhere in there is a Stalinist remains that somewhere among the Stalinist memories that Putin has inherited, where it belongs. It's like when Xi Jinping was leaving Moscow after a long visit. When he said goodbye to Putin, he told him to take care of yourself, my friend. Take care, my friend. Which sounded ambiguous. I remember he left it was a visit on March 20th, 2022. Xi Jinping's movement half a day been monitored. It seems to me that you are following Xi Jinping's movements. It must be disturbing. The main thing is that he doesn't follow mine. I once interviewed my young daughter, published it, and it got hundreds of thousands of views. She was very young at the time, maybe 5 years old. And suddenly she said, "Putin is not Putin." When I asked her what she thought he would do if he saw it, she got scared and clarified, "Is he sure he will see it?" I replied, "Of course, he watches all my interviews." The poor kid was even confused.
Знаете, я вам скажу, я брал интервью у своей дочки маленькой и опубликовал это интервью. Оно набрало там сотни тысяч просмотров, но дело не в этом. Она сказала, сколько ей лет 5 тогда было, она сказала, что Путин, Владимир Путин, он не Владимир Путин, он сказал ребенок, и сказала, я хочу, чтобы Путин. Ну и это все вышло, значит, и я ей говорю, Алисочка, а скажи, вот как ты думаешь, а вот Путин, когда это увидит, что он будет делать? Она притихла, она говорит, а Путин это увидит? Я говорю, конечно, Путин все мои интервью смотрит.
Let him hide in bunkers deeper than Khamenei. We have nowhere to go. As we joked with Shittelman, I will soon be a black widow for Russians, and so be it. Putin has a strange habit of spoiling my birthday. I have it on September 3rd. And as it happens, he arranges his trips on that day. Last year he went to Mongolia, adding to my troubles and spoiling my holiday. And the air was spoiled then too, if you know what I mean. He's up to something again this year, and I won't have a holiday again. When you found out it was my birthday on September 3rd, you even joked about the song. Yeah, it's almost about me. And the poems are written, Dmitry, what are you? Now you will remember this date. I would even propose to the Verkhovna Rada to declare September 3rd a national holiday. And if I were to fantasize, I would like it to become Putin's departure day, because every step he takes on these dates adds trouble and work. He's going to China again in early September. I wonder what he will be begging his patron there. A bone, a stick, or maybe a collar. This is the country that calls itself the Great Russia.
Собственно, он тут собрался в начале сентября в Китай, Дмитрий, в Китай. Как вы думаете, что он поползет туда клянчить у своего хозяина?
Кость. Или палку.
Или ошейник.
Вы знаете, это страна, которая называет себя Великой Россией, я имею в виду.
Imagine how pale Russia would look without the support of China, Iran, and North Korea. Take away Chinese technology, Iranian drones, North Korean shells and missiles, and it becomes clear what the world's second army is based on. An axis of evil has been created. China is actively involved in Putin's crimes. I always say what I think. I don't aspire to be a diplomat or a politician, and I enjoy being able to speak my mind. In my opinion, China is aiding the fascist aggression against Ukraine, regardless of whether they officially recognize it. There have even been cases of captured Chinese fighters fighting on the side of Russia. This is why I have an extremely negative attitude towards Xi Jinping. He may not care, but I do. His public visits and participation in parades on Red Square only reinforce this impression.
Войне фашистской России против Украины. Участвует на стороне России, потому что помогает России. Как бы он ни хотел это признавать. Даже китайцев мы уже пленных показывали, и их интервью все видели. Пленные китайцы, которые воевали за русских. Вот, поэтому я очень плохо отношусь к Си Цзиньпину из-за этого. Я понимаю, что ему все равно, как я к нему отношусь, но мне не все равно. Я к нему отношусь очень плохо. Он помогает Путину. И эти его демонстративные приезды на эти шабаши на Красной площади.
This is also a spit in the face of Ukraine, the United States, and the entire West. You cannot sit next to a criminal and shake his hand. You can get dirty with blood, of which Putin has more than enough on his hands. It is the blood not only of Ukrainians, but also of Russians and representatives of other peoples whose lives have been destroyed. He has ground them up, drunk on blood, and those who continue to embrace him at parades are people I categorically do not respect. It's a disgusting sight. Participating in these celebrations is like standing knee-deep in blood. Xi Jinping is just squeezing resources. He benefits from cheap supplies, and he's not shy about taking advantage of that. And he's exploiting Iran too. Of course, he's worried, but not about the moral implications. He's worried about losing his seat in China. His position within the country is shaken, and August will be a month of serious tests for him. And if Putin gets involved, it will only add to the pressure. China has serious problems. The economy is cracking. The birth rate is falling catastrophically. It used to be the country with the highest birth rate in the world. But now, even after the abolition of the one family, one child policy, the Chinese cannot be motivated to have children. The situation is not simple and requires close attention.
Китай, который когда-то был первым по рождаемости в мире, уже вынуждены были принять программу «Одна семья, один ребенок», а теперь не заставишь китайцев рожать?
They don't. There are a lot of homosexuals in China. The country is probably number one in the world in terms of their specific number. They have serious problems with the birth rate and the economy, including the collapse of the construction industry pyramid scheme. Putin's problems right now are completely out of time for them. Xi Jinping would love it if Putin took over Ukraine in a few days or a month. Then he would be free to act on Taiwan. He certainly blames some of his woes on Putin, but still has to engage with him. They share a common strategy and circumstances. As Butусов once sang, bound by one chain, bound by one goal. It's a pity that he, like Kinchev, has become a regrettable figure in his old age. It's good that there are people like Makarevich, Grebenshchikov, Shevchuk, and others who have stayed on the side of light and kept their dignity. Xi Jinping is likely to support Putin as long as it does not conflict with his interests in the international arena. When support becomes more harmful than its absence, he will back down.
Хорошо, что есть Макаревич, Гребенщиков, Шевчук и другие прекрасные люди, которые не стали на старости лет посмешищем, как эти престарелые рокеры, остались людьми, которые на стороне света. Как хорошо, что они есть. Поэтому, Си Цзиньпин, конечно, будет поддерживать Путина, я думаю, до последнего, пока это не пойдет вразрез с его интересами на международной арене, пока он не увидит, что поддерживать Путина ему хуже, чем не поддерживать его.
Until the West makes adjustments in relations with China, the situation will remain difficult, although movement in that direction has already begun. Putin's situation is extremely difficult, especially in the economy. Everything is overheated by the state defense order, and apart from it, nothing. Sanctions block imports. Import substitution is virtually non-existent. Production capabilities are limited. Qualifications are low. Russia produces nothing on its own. No nails, no tires, no matches, no buttons, no paper clips, not to mention sophisticated machinery and cars. Let the viewers write in the comments what exactly Russia produces without Western equipment, technology, and components. That would be honest. A country that calls itself great is not, in fact, great.
Ни гвоздей, ни покрышек, ни спичек, ни кнопок, ни скрепок, не говоря уже о каких-то автомобилях выдающихся. Я вас прошу, напишите мне прямо сейчас в комментарии, что Россия производит сама без западного оборудования, западных комплектующих, западных станков и западных технологий. Просто, чтобы меня пристыдить. Напишите, пожалуйста. И это страна, которая называет себя великой, а не страна. Это вообще не страна. Сброд больных и нищих.
They can't even produce nails. It's a rabble of sick people and beggars. The Financial Times wrote that this is a circus on wheels, gathered in St. Petersburg. Once the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum was prestigious. Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron, Xi Jinping came. Now Putin's children are there, random figures, complete disarray. Nevertheless, ministers have been assembled. It used to seem like an anecdote, but this is how they really live in Russia. The Minister of Finance proposes to go out for a month to guess whether the dollar will stabilize. At the meeting with Nabiullina, Silvanov and others declare that the ruble will be saved by faith, hope, love, and prayer. Intuition doesn't go away either. That's it, right? I mean, I heard it, so it's intuitive. Calculation. You know, it's all about faith. If you believe in 4%, it will definitely come true. Inflation expectations are very important. I really liked it. Faith. So I understand correctly that fighting inflation with prayer? Such insistence of the central bank backed by... I understand that you want to replace the high key rate with something. Anton suggested praying. I'm quoting the Minister of Finance. I say believe. It's amazing. I have not seen this passage before. The people in charge of Russia's financial system, Silvanov, Nabiullina, are key figures. All of this can be described in 3 words: Triune Holy Russia. Viktor and Vika Tsiganov's stories about the Triune Holy Russia in Yuri Dudya come to mind. This is an example of clogged consciousness, heavy collective karma. It would be half a trouble if they simply existed in their own world and did not interfere with others, did not try to impose their views, and did not teach how to build other people's states. But they seek to impose this way of life on everyone, especially us. We do not want to live as they do, and they wonder, why? Where is the Russian world? I recently formulated a precise metaphor for this phenomenon. The symbol of the Russian world is a big, fat, green dung fly of a wooden toilet. It has to be a wooden, open toilet. And in all such toilets that I have been to in Russia, there was always the same word on the walls, an obligatory attribute.
Я 2 дня назад, я вам скажу, Ирина, вывел потрясающую формулу, я кайфую. Я вывел формулу русского мира. Я вам ее повторю. Это меня осенило в одном из прямых эфиров. Я понял, что русский мир, знаете, что такое символ русского мира? Большая, жирная, зеленая навозная муха деревянного русского туалета. Да. Вот это символ русского мира. И я считаю, что на герб России надо нанести, на флаг России, большую эту навозную зеленую муху. Обязательно. Но чтобы деревянный туалет там был, причем раскрытый, где обязательно во всех туалетах, где я был по России в свое время, в деревянных, везде было написано слово Вот это обязательно. На стене обязательный атрибут.
Without it, the Russian world does not exist. It's true. They pretend to be naive for nothing. I spoke to economist Leonid Skadovsky, and he believes that neither God nor anyone else will help them. The economic situation in Russia is a disaster at both the federal and regional levels. Inflation cannot be stopped. There is a full set of problems. No one and nothing will help them. This is karma, payback for everything they have done to my country. And it will be bad for everyone, the leaders, their supporters, and those who silently supported them. Today I saw the footage. 2023, women came out to stand up for the mobilized, who are not being released. They say, let our husbands, sons, brothers go. We support the SVO, we are for Russia, but let them come home. They're gonna get hit too. Karma will befall them all.
Которых не отпускают. Ну, говорят, отпустите наших мужей и сыновей, и братьев мобилизованных. Ну, мобилизовали, но пора же уже их вернуть. Мы поддерживаем СВО, говорят они. Мы поддерживаем, мы за Россию, но отпустите их только.
Dmitry, the Telegraph reports that Kremlin hawks are urging Putin to escalate further in Ukraine. Yet analysts say there's no real split. Virtually everyone in the Russian government backs the war. Some may prefer Nice over Syzran for vacations, but overall, they're content. Imperial ambitions persist, and no one's backing down. According to the Telegraph, certain figures are reportedly calling for more strikes, broader mobilization, and greater pressure on NATO. Still, as former SBU officer Ivan Stupak noted, Russia has already recruited 175,000 new troops and faces no issues as long as funding continues. This raises a question. Is this a genuine push for escalation, media fear-mongering, or a sign of renewed pro-war activity in Crimea? Such a wing does exist, but it has no influence. I'm talking about the so-called shooters, the Gherkins, the war correspondents. They are either in jail or easily controlled. This kind of stuffing is done on purpose to create the impression that Putin is holding back the radicals, while he himself looks like a liberal. Through these publications, he sends a signal to the West. Look, my country is demanding even tougher regulations, but I am holding back. Agree with me, because if I don't, it will be worse. This is a tool of pressure. Western media should not be considered completely incorruptible. For a lot of money, you can promote the right materials even in the leading publications. Russia is actively using oil money to influence public opinion, politicians, and the media in other countries. At the same time, it can offer nothing constructive. No cars, no airplanes, no space technology. The West creates all this, and Russia can only destroy. Creation is inaccessible to it. But destruction, toxic propaganda, and a symbolic wooden toilet with a dung fly is what it can do.
Влиять на мировые правительства, на лидеров общественных мнений, и так далее, общественного мнения, на жизнь других стран. Ничего хорошего они дать этим странам не могут. Ни Мерседесы сделать, ни космические корабли, ни, я не знаю, самолеты. Не, это все Запад производит. А вот нагадить — это да. Созидать — нет. Нагадить — да. Этим они овладели просто в совершенстве.
The new Pyongyang-Moscow train, gifted to Shoigu, will run for 7 to 9 days. As Roman Cymbalyuk noted, that's enough time to suffocate, though it's likely intended not for passengers, but for transporting 25,000 drone assemblers, sappers, and weapons from North Korea. While it may seem comical, the situation is actually serious and risky. You can really stink there. Trains from Moscow to Vladivostok take 7 days, and this is considered the norm. I watch such videos on YouTube. It is important for me to understand what we are dealing with. Where to wash there? There are no conditions. It's time to get used to the land. These are the kind of trains that will transport North Koreans. Who in their right mind would go to Pyongyang? Unless it's out of curiosity, like going to the zoo or the circus. But even then, by airplane, not by traveling 7 days across Russia and North Korea. You'd have to be pretty desperate. Putin's cooperation with Kim Jong-un certainly strengthens his ability to continue the war and kill more accurately and at less cost. Can anyone influence that? Apparently not. Kim Jong-un is not an independent figure. China is behind him. North Korea is a proxy for China, just as South Korea is backed by the US. Kim Jong-un can be influenced by Xi Jinping, and to some extent Trump could do it. He even tried to do it by visiting him, hugging him, making public gestures.
Ну, давайте так. Ким Чен Ын, он что, такой крутой, что вот он так стоит со своими ядерными боеголовками, и весь мир не знает, как, на какой козе к нему подойти и подъехать? Нет. Ким Чен Ын — это прокси Китая. То есть за ним стоит Китай. За Северной Кореей стоит Китай. Вот, за Южной Кореей стоят США. Поэтому влиять на Ким Чен Ына может Си Цзиньпин, и Трамп может влиять на Ким Чен Ына. Но Трамп пытался уже на него повлиять, даже приезжал туда, даже обнимался с этим колченогим.
What's it all come to? Nothing. It was a failure for Trump. The North Korea track was a failure for him. Nothing was accomplished. As we speak, on the evening of June 19th at 8:50 p.m. Kiev time, the White House speaker said that Trump will make a decision on Iran within 2 weeks. Why exactly 2 weeks? It's become almost a cult formula. Apparently, he can't get enough of the popularity of Alexei Arestovich, who also had to decide everything in 2 or 3 weeks. Now Trump wants to use the same rhetorical device to gloss over Israel's possible military success. In 2 weeks, though, Israel will likely have already dealt with everything. Iran is hitting Israel with painful blows. I saw serious destruction in Tel Aviv and Beirut today. I really wish Ayatollah Khamenei would pass away as soon as possible. So much evil he has brought to his people. It is a catastrophe. Iran was a prosperous country until 1979, before the overthrow of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Everything changed after the Islamic Revolution.
Посмотрим, что будет. Очень хочется, чтобы быстрее этот Аятолла Хаминеи закончил свое существование, потому что столько зла приносить — это невозможно, это ужас. Зла для своего народа прежде всего. Загнать свой народ в такое состояние, это же вообще Иран была процветающая страна. Слушайте, до 1979 года, пока Шаха не свергли, Мохаммеда Реза Пехлеви,
it was really beautiful there, almost Europe. Girls in short skirts, Iranian cinema, bright and distinctive, rich country, oil, steady development. But fanatics came and destroyed everything. Fanaticism is a misfortune, a great misfortune. Another misfortune is that Russia has brought itself to the point where it finds itself in the wooden toilet of history. Pardon the metaphor. I went to your Instagram, friends. Be sure to subscribe. There is humor and riles and fragments from our interview, and also on YouTube. Dmytro Gordon as a guest of Gordon, and of course, Olesya Basman. All the links are below this video. I regularly watch it myself, and I advise you to subscribe to the Telegram channel. It always has the latest and verified news. I kept wondering why you are so smart and beautiful, why you always know everything. And now I realized, you're just subscribed to all my social networks. That's the secret. Just don't tell anyone, okay? Only our hundreds of thousands of viewers. But they're allowed. They're ours.
Но секрет есть секрет, и больше никому не говорите, да. Только сотням тысяч наших зрителей. Ну и можно, они же наши, правильно?
That's right. Friends, if you want to be in the same mood as me, please, it will only get better. Dmitry, I saw a picture of you with Annie Lorak. I looked at it in passing today and decided not to waste airtime, but I'll tell you, she doesn't seem smart, beautiful, or talented anymore. The same thing is happening to her as to Putin. Everything is fading outwardly. She appears at some cheap events. She was seen performing, got a Russian passport, and this was proudly reported by the Russian media. What was it necessary to stoop to? Over many years in the arts, I have amassed an impressive archive, both photos and videos, containing many people of all kinds.
У меня собрался очень внушительный архив, и фотоархив, и видеоархив, где запечатлены самые разные люди.
I regularly post archival photos on Instagram that are 30, 40 years old. It so happened that from the age of 16, I always had photojournalists around me, capturing both photos and videos. Today I published a shot of Annie Lorak in 1999, a charming girl with a great voice, people's artist of Ukraine, quiet, modest, promising. I, as a researcher, am interested in the anatomy of betrayal. How did it happen that a girl who was favored by her country, who grew up in a boarding school, who lost her brother in Afghanistan, who had talent and love for Ukrainian song, who swore her devotion to Ukraine, turned away from it at the most difficult moment? What happened to that girl, who was the pride of the country? How did she become a traitor, leaving her hometown and country just when her voice would have been especially important?
Которая так пела украинские песни, которая так клялась в любви к Украине. Вот эта фотография. Вот что с этой девочкой произошло, что она стала просто подлой предательницей. В самое тяжелое время предала свою страну, свой город.
She's from Kitsmani, Chernivtsi region. How does this happen to people? Why do they become traitors, take citizenship of a country that kills their brothers, sisters, and relatives? At least Lorak is silent for now. And I will soon post footage from one concert where Povali spoke frankly about Russia. It's not for the faint of heart. At least one of them is silent, and the other one is voicing her views. I'll post it on Instagram soon. Do you want to be smart and beautiful like Iryna Uzlova? Subscribe. Direct proof of how it affects. I feel 1,000 years younger.
А та предала и говорит. Я выставлю скоро в Инстаграме. Подписывайтесь на мой Инстаграм и на Телеграм, и вообще на все. Хотите быть умной и красивой, как Ирина Узлова? Что я вас уговариваю? Подписывайтесь.
Просто наочный пример того, как это полезно, насколько. И прямо,
Да.
Да. И чувствую себя на 1000 лет еще младше. Ну и еще одно, такие бантики у нас, да.
And one more thing. A network for selling sex with minors to wealthy clients has been set up in the Russian Federation. Among the figures mentioned is Deripaska. This is reported by the publication Vurstka, quite authoritative among the opposition. And what about the claimed scruples? Look what it comes down to. The story of Nastya Rybka, a model and escort who published photos and talked about sexual relations with Deripaska on his yacht, caused a resonance at the time. Prikodko, the president's former foreign affairs aide and associate, was also mentioned. He died soon after the scandal, and everything was handled quietly, ends in water. Deripaska is one of those who, having looted billions, has tried everything, airplanes, yachts, luxury, but nothing pleases him anymore. There are many such examples in Russia, and it is not only about him. This is how they live, not knowing what to be happy about. And may these joys become fewer and fewer.
Их уже ничего не вставляет, не радует. Это же люди уже, слушайте, которые уже не знают, чему радоваться. Я много таких примеров знаю в России. Я вам хочу сказать, ни одного Дерипаску. Много.
Я даже не сомневаюсь. Но радости мы им будем преуменьшать все дальше и больше, чтобы они вообще ничему не радовались.
After Nastya Rybka's revelations, Deripaska was called Deriri Rybka. Not my idea, but I applaud. Very accurate, I couldn't say it better. Dmitry, thank you for your bright commentary, for the mood, and for the frankness you generously share. I hope to see you again very soon. Iryna, thank you too, and thank you to our esteemed viewers for listening and being with us. It requires patience and attention. I appreciate it. Sometimes I wonder why you are listening to me. But go ahead, it's a joke. Thank you for everything. See you soon. And our listeners are with us because they want to be as smart, beautiful, and young. We have already recorded that. Dmytro Gordon, Ukrainian journalist, and Iryna Uzlova, Ukrainian anchor and journalist, were with you.
Поэтому слушайте дальше. Это я пошутил. Спасибо за все. До скорых встреч.
До скорых. Они нас слушают, чтобы быть такими же умными, красивыми и молодыми. Это мы уже зафиксировали. Дмитрий Гордон, украинский журналист, Ирина Узлова, украинская ведущая и журналистка, была вместе с ним. Друзья, спасибо, что провели с нами это время. Подписывайтесь на наши YouTube и на наши соцсети.
Friends, thank you for being with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channels and social networks. Leave comments. Feedback is always important and nice. Don't forget about likes, they're not so good right now. Let's fix that. Whatever you like. Kittens, dogs, balloons. See you and we'll win for sure.
Увидимся и победим.